What was the law of the grain and drink offerings? This is the question, and we seek to answer today as we continue our verse-by-verse study of the book of Numbers on Walking Through the Bible. If you have a Bible with you, you can turn to Numbers 15. We're going to be reading from verses 1 to 10. If you don't have a Bible, don't worry. Just follow along with us on the screen. The version that we'll be reading from is the New King James Version. So, Numbers 15, beginning at verse 1. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, and say to them, When you have come into the land you are to inhabit, which I am giving to you, and you make an offering by fire to the Lord, a burnt offering or a sacrifice, to fulfill a vow, or as a free will offering in your appointed feasts, to make a sweet aroma to the Lord from the herd or the flock, then he who presents his offering to the Lord shall bring a grain offering of 1/10 of an ephah of fine flour, mixed with 1/4 of a hin of oil, and 1/4 of a hin of wine as a drink offering. You shall prepare with the burnt offering or the sacrifice for each lamb. Or for a ram you shall prepare as a grain offering 2/10 of an ephah of fine flour, mixed with 1/3 of a hin of oil, and as a drink offering you shall offer 1/3 of a hin of wine as a sweet aroma to the Lord. And when you prepare a young bull as a burnt offering, or as a sacrifice to fulfill a vow, or as a peace offering to the Lord, then shall be offered with the young bull a grain offering of 3/10 of an ephah of fine flour, mixed with half a hin of oil, and you shall bring as the drink offering half a hin of wine, as an offering made by fire, a sweet aroma to the Lord. At the end of the last chapter, we had Israel attempt to take the promised land after God had told them that they would wander in the wilderness for 40 years after they rebelled against him. Such was a foolish idea, and Moses told them so, for God was not going to be with them, and they would be defeated. And defeated they were by the people of the land. Thus began the 40 years of wandering in the wilderness. Coming now to chapter 15, we leave the narrative and come back to more laws given for Israel to follow. This will be a pattern for much of the next few chapters, as God will be further expanding on his laws. Why would God do this? Well, remember, Israel is wandering in the wilderness. One generation is dying, while another is growing up. We're not given a time marker for this chapter, so it is quite possible that these instructions were given sometime after the events of chapter 14, thus meaning these instructions were given as a reinforcement of what was revealed in Leviticus. As for the sacrifices themselves, we discussed many of them in Leviticus 1 through 7, so if you want to review those sacrifices, you can go to the Leviticus playlist found on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/East End Church of Christ. Verse 1, even though it is about to give instructions as to the law, does give the children of Israel a promise that they would enter the promised land. Thus God was assuring them that they will not all die in the wilderness, but would enter the land if they would but obey him. When they were to offer those sacrifices made by fire to the Lord, whether it is a burnt offering or sacrifice to fulfill a vow or a freewill offering, or an offering at one of the feasts, then along with the prescribed animal, which in the first case was a lamb of the sheep or goats, they were to bring a grain offering as well as 1/10 of an ephah of fine flour mixed with 1/4 of a hin of oil. They were also to bring a drink offering of 1/4 of a hin of wine. This was to be done for each lamb. If, however, the animal was a ram, then the grain and drink offering would be slightly different. For the ram, the grain offering would be 2/10 of an ephah of fine flour mixed with 1/3 of a hin of oil. The drink offering would be 1/3 of a hin of wine. If the animal was a young bull, either to fulfill a vow or as a peace offering, the grain offering would be 3/10 of an ephah of fine flour mixed with half a hin of oil. The drink offering was half a hin of wine. From these offerings it appears that the grain offering and drink offering changed depending on the size of the animal. Lambs were small, so the grain and drink offerings were small. A ram was larger than a lamb, so the grain offering and drink offerings were larger. And a young bull was even larger, so the grain offering and drink offerings were even larger. That God was so meticulous in how he wanted these sacrifices done should have shown Israel that God did care about the little things. For after all, these sacrifices were to be offered as a sweet aroma to the Lord. Thus, if they wanted God to accept their sacrifices, It needed to be done his way. If you recall back to the story of Cain and Abel in Genesis 4, we don't know whether Cain offered the incorrect sacrifice or whether his attitude was wrong, but whichever was the case, his sacrifice was not accepted because it was not offered in the way that God commanded. Israel could learn from that, and so can we. We don't offer physical sacrifices, but we do offer spiritual sacrifices. If we want God to accept them, we need to obey all of God's law. With that, our time is up for today. The Lord willing, we hope you'll join us for tomorrow's discussion of Numbers 15, verses 11 to 21, as we continue our walk through the Bible, one verse at a time. Thank you for watching today's episode. We hope that you found it edifying and ask that you not only subscribe to our channel and podcast, but that you like and share this episode among your friends, so that the saving gospel of Jesus Christ can go out to the whole world.